guys,
Hi.
and welcome to I Heart Murder. I'm Syl, and this is Dirk.
Thank you all for tuning back in for week 2, episode 2.
Well, it's week 2, so therefore episode 2 logically anyway.
True, that was, yeah.
That's cool. Got a couple of things just to catch up on before we get into the good stuff. So, I made a mistake last week, which was Antonio Agostini died in 1969, not 1960. If you haven't seen last week's episode, go check it out. It's about the Pajama Girl. We now have social media links. We've got an I Heart Murder Facebook page. On Instagram, it's iHeartMurder2, because my email is iHeartMurder2@gmail.com, because someone obviously got there first. There's an I Heart Murder YouTube page now, and an I Heart Murder Twitter, which I think if you just Google I Heart Murder Twitter, it should come up, but if not, it's at I Heart Murder 3.
We're all social media'd up.
Yep, everybody loves murder.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a website, which is i-heart-murder.captivate.fm.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcast is now on Apple Podcasts. I'm chasing up Spotify because it doesn't come up when you search for it. Although it says it's published on Spotify. So, I don't know what's going on there. So, that's all the housekeeping done.
Hopefully soon we'll be able to say wherever you get your podcast from. And since
we are working on that.
Since the debut episode, still, I found a copy of the Pajama Girl case that you mentioned.
Yes.
A 1970s giallo horror film with Ray Milland and what would have been one of his last roles. It's loosely based on the case.
Very loosely.
So loosely that it's actually set at the time the film was made, the 70s, but it's set in Australia and follows 2 stories concerning murder and whatnot. So
yeah.
I'm still looking forward to watching it at some point.
Me too.
Nice. Nice.
So if you have any suggestions for murders that you want us to cover, I've already got one from a friend. Please email us, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere like that. Just give us a yell and we'll put it on the list.
Please do.
So, on to the good stuff.
Yes, who are we going to cover today?
So, today, Dirk is usually kept in the dark about what we're talking about week to week. Okay, so have you ever heard of the first Australian serial killer?
Wasn't he, and it was a male, wasn't he active surprisingly recently, as in the 50s or early 60s?
Early 60s, but the coin serial killer, the term was only coined in the 60s, 70s, around there.
Yes, even though plenty of people were serial killers, had killed multiple victims before then, you just didn't have
the actual coin term was...
The term.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of argument about what actually defines a serial killer.
I'm sure there is.
Like, basically, there's an argument about whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 victims.
Yeah.
But there has to be a cooling off period between victims. Otherwise, it's a mass murder or other definitions. Do you want me to do that? Definitions of serial killers? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as there is a cooling off period. It could be a few hours, or it could be a few days, or it could be a few months or years.
Okay.
So, it just matters that there is a cooling off period.
Right. Not all at once.
No, not all at once. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're right. It is 1961, 1962.
Okay.
And I have a question mark of Australia's first serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't Australian.
Right.
So, he was born in 1926. His name is William MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born in 1926 in Liverpool, England.
Right. So, he was a Scouser immigrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, like, he wouldn't be Australian, but he wasn't a citizen. He hadn't taken the citizenship test. He wasn't a permanent resident, as far as I'm aware.
But the crimes took place
took place in Australia.
Okay.
Yes, so. Anyway, he enlisted in the army, and he was raped by a corporal. Right? So he didn't like that at first, but then realised he liked it, and became an active homosexual.
Okay. So this was when he was a young man in the
Yeah, 20s, early 20s.
So he would have been the late 40s. So this would have been the time of national service, peacetime conscription in the UK.
Yeah.
It's interesting you should mention
He was
that.
based in Lancashire.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of because there were barracks in that part of England. Like you have homosexuality and gay relationships going on between armed personnel, going all the way back to the ancient Greeks and probably even before that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's a lot of during World War II and afterwards in countries like Britain that had peacetime national service. You hear a lot of stories about young gay men coming out in this all male environment.
Maybe
but it
they
had
were
to be
bored.
Well, you did have maybe they were bored. You had your free time, you had not just your leave outside of the camp, but you also had all of your activities and your social bonding with the members of your same gender inside. And also, but it had to be not just because of military rules, but because it was still homosexual activity was still illegal until 1967 in Britain after the Wolfenden Report. So yeah, you definitely had to be subtle about it. But a lot of young
wink, wink,
men,
nudge, nudge.
Exactly. Even Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, when he was a young man in his early 20s, he did national service, and that was one of the formative coming out moments for him too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Okay. Now you do.
Now I do. Learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from... Oh, excuse me.
Oh.
In 1949, he moved to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1955, he moved to Australia.
Okay.
So he moved around a bit.
He did.
And shortly after he moved to Australia, he was arrested for touching a detective's penis.
Right.
In a public toilet.
Oh, right. So kind of like a prelude to cottaging.
I think the dude was undercover, so...
That was often...
I don't think he'd go, oh, cop, penis.
A plain clothes,
yeah.
He probably was hoping it would be a case of no clothes.
No, maybe. Or at least a bit of a quickie.
Pretty much.
And he got a 2-year good behaviour bond for that one.
That was often how you uncovered social deviancy, homosexuality. Yeah. You would solicit gay men in public toilets.
They do it now. Undercover ops to get people. Not gay men, but like drug deals and sex workers
because I'm
and stuff
thinking
like that.
It's not a crime anymore.
No, I'm not talking about gay men. I'm talking about in general.
Oh yeah,
they still use that strategy to get the bad dudes.
It's still acting, yeah.
Although I'm not saying sex workers are bad dudes because they're really not.
Absolutely,
they're doing what they got to do, and if they're not doing what they got to do, they're doing what they like to get money. So, yeah, go for it.
It's again social demonising. And it's not good.
There's nothing wrong with a woman liking sex. Mm-hmm. Or a dude wanting to get money either. So, I see nothing wrong with it.
And neither do I.
Yes. So, then we go to Brisbane. Now, it's very vague about why he went to Brisbane. It doesn't really say why he went to Brisbane or whatever. But in Brisbane, 1961, he met 55-year-old Amos Hurst at the Roma Street station in Brisbane.
Yeah.
They got drunk at the local pubs and then went back to Hurst's place. Maybe, I don't know, what did guys do back then? Go and crash on people's couches? I'm not sure. Anyway, MacDonald...
Especially in certain scenes.
Yeah. After Hurst got trashed, MacDonald began to strangle him and then he bled all over MacDonald's hands, so MacDonald then punched Hurst, killing him.
Ooh.
He then put Hurst to bed, pulled up the sheets up to his neck, like a little baby, turned off the lights, and left.
Okay. Trying to make it seem as if nothing
was untoward.
Okay.
Yeah. So, obituary reports and all that said that Hurst died accidentally, which MacDonald was so happy about, because he was paranoid about the cops coming to get him about it.
Yeah.
And so, he got away with murder. He got away with murder for a while. So, victim number 2 is Alfred Reginald Greenfield.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in June 1961, so Amos Hurst was before that.
Yes.
But I'm figuring not too far forward, like before it, but doesn't have dates for all of these guys.
Okay, just approximations.
Just approximations. So, June 4th, 1961 in Sydney, so we're back in Sydney.
Yeah.
He met Alfred Reginald Greenfield in Green Park, which is opposite St Vincent's Hospital in Darlinghurst
Mm.
and offered him a drink. Well, I think it's in Darlinghurst. I'm fairly sure it's in Darlinghurst. And offered him a drink. And so he lured Greenfield to the Sydney Domain bars, which are nearby,
Yes.
and with promise of more grog. And he waited until Greenfield fell asleep, stabbed him 30 times, and the first step, Greenfield was actually kind of lucky, because the first stab actually severed his neck arteries.
Right.
So he bled out quite quickly.
Yes.
So
over for him.
Very quickly, which was fortunate for him. But he was stabbed 30 times. Like, the MacDonald's got some issues.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of issues manifesting.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse.
It gets worse?
It gets worse. And you'd probably feel this a lot more than me. MacDonald then removed Greenfield's pants and undies and cut off Greenfield's testicles and penis and threw them into the harbour.
Okay. So, castration,
Yep.
the ritual debollicking.
Mutilation, castration, murder,
Now,
rage.
could that psychologically be traced back to his initial forced sexual encounter, I wonder?
We'll get to that a bit later.
Okay.
But this is what he did to this guy.
Mm.
And yeah. I would not want to be the cops that come up across that body. Personally.
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Okay. Next victim number 3, is William Coben.
Mm-hmm.
And this occurred in between June 1961 and March 1962.
Okay.
They don't have a date for it, but it's
Right.
in that time frame. He was found in a public toilet in Moore Park in Sydney. Allured, again, with grog to get him. And then they just sat in the public toilet drinking.
Okay.
I've been a deviant and drank in parks and on I'm a gutter snipe. Sat in gutters and had a drink. Never done it in a public toilet. Those things are gross.
It can happen.
I know, but
especially
it's still gross.
Especially not separate units in parks, like in the in the public toilets that are inside, say, public houses, for instance. There's a bit of surreptitious consumption of grog that goes on there, but in a public toilet, that's
in a park,
quite unhygienic. In a park, yeah.
And I bet you that this is why they lock the gates on public toilets after dark.
That could have something to do with it, or public safety, morals, something like that. But
well, I think this covers all of those.
Certainly.
Because Coben was not safe. And it's pretty morally wrong to kill someone.
Mm.
So I think that's covering all of it. Anywho, this one was even more odd.
Mm.
So MacDonald put on a plastic raincoat.
Mm.
Alright? And then stabbed Coben with an uppercut into the neck.
Oh!
Severing the jugular. Which I'm kind of a little bit confused about that. Unless he went kind of sideways.
Oh, there
Yeah.
must have been quite a bit of spatter from that.
Oh, yeah. The cubicle was covered in blood.
Ugh.
And he has a plastic raincoat on. I think this is where the guy from American Psycho, figured it out of wearing a raincoat when he chainsawed that dude. But yeah, anywho.
Well, maybe Ellis read the case notes. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
Mm.
Severing the jugular, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so apparently Coben tried to defend himself, but ultimately didn't succeed.
Mm.
Obviously.
Obviously.
MacDonald continued to stab Coben, even after the poor bugger was dead. Like,
that's rage.
After he finished his stabbing spree, MacDonald pulled down his pants and undies and cut his bits off again.
Again.
Yep. But this time, he put them in a plastic bag along with the raincoat and took them home. He left the scene and
just hung them up on the mantelpiece?
They say that he disclosed what he did with the genitals when he got home in the trial, but I can't find trial transcripts. And I'm not entirely sure I want to.
Oh, fair enough.
It's just enough to know that he took them home with him.
Anything could have happened there.
Yeah.
You could probably find transcripts somewhere, but...
Yeah, he could have made beef jerky. Or what would you call human meat? Human meat jerky?
flesh jerky?
Flesh jerky? Yeah.
Yeah, that's... I was thinking, I wonder if he possibly consumed.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, it does not say anything about cannibalism, though.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, plastic bag along with the raincoat. He left the scene, washed his hands and face on the way home. So, March 31, 1962. This one's just weird. Okay, so he met Frank Gladstone McLean. McLean? We'll go with McLean.
Yeah, I think I was acceptable, but...
Like the town.
Yeah.
So he met McLean walking down Burke Street in Darlinghurst, near the cop shop. So near the police station, right?
Okay.
Proposed a drinking session nearby down Burke Lane, and so off they went. You know, guys and booze, dude.
Also, at that point in time in Sydney's history, you had a very large concentration of pubs on that street and in the immediate vicinity, the
Really?
cross streets and
I'd heard about Oxford Street and Pitt Street, but I hadn't heard about Burke Street.
Yeah, there was still a large number of pubs. They didn't get as much attention as the aforementioned areas of inner Sydney, but
Well, Oxford and Pitt Street seem to be a little bit more loud.
With
their clientele and such.
They still had loud nightlife, just different sort of ambience and music, even then and before.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was after the end of the 6 o'clock closing in New South Wales. That ended in 1955, so you could do things a bit more out in the open.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. I learned so much talking to you doing this.
Oh, shucks, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you learned too.
Absolutely.
So as they enter Burke Lane, MacDonald pulls out a knife and just stabs McLean on in the throat. That seems to be.
There seems to be a
Well, there's a lot
fixation.
There's a lot of delicate stuff in your neck.
Yes.
Your spine, the top of your spinal cord, all your little jugulars and
so you can
carotids and all that fun stuff.
Paralysis, blood spurts, and splatter.
You can lose your ability to breathe and your voice box and that if you cut the front.
Oh, yeah, the larynx is affected, definitely. Yeah.
Yep, all sorts of stuff.
Oh boy.
It's quite a valid place to shove a knife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess one could say that, yeah.
A valid place to shove a knife. Okay.
Indeed.
Severing the jugular straight up. Oh no, I'm in the wrong spot. Wait.
Back up, Syl.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. In the throat. McLean tried. I've got to try McLean, like John McLean.
Yeah, just think of it.
Yeah.
Just think of John McLean in your head.
McLean tried to defend himself, as did Coburn, but was too tanked and fell down. Went boom.
Yep.
McLean was over. MacDonald was over McLean. Too many mucks. Having a stab fest.
Yeah. While McLean's desire was provoked, but the booze took away from the performance.
Pretty much.
Non-sexual.
I've heard about that.
Yeah. Using the quote from Macbeth in the non-sexual way.
So in the head and in McLean's head, neck, throat, face, chest, and abdomen. So all over the front bit.
Is that the most extensive damage stabbing so far?
It doesn't say in other ones exactly where he was stabbed. Like I think the guy that got 300 stab wounds, 30 stab wounds. Sorry, oh my bad. 30 stab wounds in Mr. Greenfeld. If that wouldn't have all been in his neck. I'm figuring it would be like down his chest and that too.
Further south.
Or even into his face like he is with McLean.
Okay. Definitely up there from what we know
about
the anatomy affected.
From my readings with stab wounds, most people, when they're having like a stab fest, it's not just in one area. Especially when they're really mad.
No, the crime site is quite extensive, quite vast. Yeah.
So anyway, he's having a happy little time with his slicing and dicing, right?
Yeah.
But he was interrupted by a young couple with a baby. He heard the baby cry.
Okay.
And so he, like, retreated to the bushes and was sitting there while, like, watching this couple, right, come across McLean. And then when they went to go get the cops, which is just up the road...
Yeah, and it's not far away from the cop shop.
Yeah, he returned to McLean, who was barely holding on, mortally wounded.
Yes.
Finished the job, pulled down his pants and undies, cut off his peenie, cut off his genitals, sorry, put them in a plastic bag and took them home.
And was not caught.
And was not caught.
Wow, that's very, dare I say, unfortunately, ballsy on his part.
That was insane.
Oh, that was insane. Considering the very real risk that he could have been, discovered.
Yeah.
So was there a manhunt? Was there increased police presence from this point?
I don't know about the police presence, but he was about this time given the nickname the Sydney Mutilator.
The Sydney Mutilator.
Which I thought was quite hilarious.
That's graphic.
Graphic. Very graphic.
The nicknames is quite graphic. That's not really leaving anything in the dark to suggestion. Or anything like that, is it? No.
Also, about this point, the cops thought the killer might be a deranged surgeon.
Okay.
Because of all the cutting off of things.
Right. So kind of like one theory about the identity of Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, that is one theory.
Okay.
Oh, I don't want to cover that one anytime soon. That's intense. So after he did McLean,
Or McLean.
McLean, whatever. You get the point. It's McLean, okay? Say it how you wish.
I'm just yanking your chains.
I know. So, after that dude's death, MacDonald brought a small shop in Burwood under the name Alan Edward Brennan, and he was selling mixed goods, sandwiches, and deli meats. He also had an apartment upstairs, so he had some privacy for his slicing and dicing.
Okay. I just thought of another outcome for the genitalia.
Mm.
They went into his product.
Oh.
I know, how...
Don't. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I heart murder you're going to come up with.
Oh, come on, I don't want to be thinking about eating testicles, though. Look, I don't even like eating, like, testicles you're supposed to eat, like bull testicles and stuff.
I'm sure all of his customers, you know, they would have gone along with the dictum that ignorance is bliss too. If this even happened.
Maybe. I don't think so. But, ew. Cannibals always give me the willies, though. So, that was not meant to be a pun. So...
This show, I mean, this episode, it's...
Yeah.
Right with opportunities.
So, his final victim, victim number 5 is Patrick James Hackett. And he was killed in June 6th, 1962.
Okay.
And he was the first victim in McDonald's New Digs.
Right.
So, bless your face.
Thank you.
So, testing out, like, the soundproofing and I guess.
Of course.
So, they met Hackett at a wine saloon on Pitt Street. What's a wine saloon?
A wine saloon, thank you. A wine saloon is like a wine bar, subterranean. I think from this context, you still had, even after the 6 o'clock swill was repealed, even at this stage in the early 60s, it was 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. legal closing for pubs and maybe a little longer for other licensed establishments. But basically, saloons in this context are unlicensed premises, speakeasies, very hush-hush. I think that's the context.
Oh, sweet, okay.
But definitely a secluded place where you can get your fix of wine, and probably cheap wine too, like your flask of wine, your goon equivalent.
Okay, cool. Do they come with one of those blow-up pillows?
I think this is still a little early for the actual goon set. Oh, and fortified wine too, like flagons of port and whatnot. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, 42-year-old Hackett had just recently been released from prison because he was a thief.
Okay.
And he got busted.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not fair. He got shish kebabbed. Went back to McDonald's to drink more, where Hackett fell asleep. keeping to his MO.
Yep.
MacDonald went downstairs and got a boning knife from his shop.
Oh.
And then stabbed Hackett in the neck.
All your things on hand if you deal with yeah, small
I
goods.
wrote this woke Hackett up, duh.
Oh.
Because it would have woken me up. And he tried to defend himself from the next blow. He pushed the knife into MacDonald's hand, cutting it severely. And this caused MacDonald to lose his shit. Like, lose it. And went into a stabbing frenzy. Like, just stabbing the crap out of Hackett until he finally got his heart. Killing him. And MacDonald kept going. After he killed him, until he just could not do it anymore. He was exhausted from, stabbing.
That's quite extended psychosis there. That's a lot of energy.
A lot of anger, too.
Yeah.
Something's going on there. Anyway. Weird guy. So, he sat in the pool of blood and tried to remove Hackett's genitals. But the knife was too blunt from all the hacking. So he just, chopped at the penis and testicles a couple of times, half-heartedly, I'm guessing, because he was tired. And then he passed out because he was all tuckered out.
So would anybody, I think,
Yeah.
after such a, yeah.
He woke up in the morning and found that the pool of blood had soaked through the floorboards and had almost reached the counters downstairs.
Ooh.
So he cleaned himself up and went off to the hospital to get his hand stitched.
Yeah.
And then he became paranoid about the cops coming for Hackett and about the bloodstains that he couldn't get rid of off the floor in the floorboards because it had soaked through and on the walls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he hid the body under the shop.
Okay.
And took off to Brisbane. He's just like, nope, I'm out of here.
Went back up north again.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Tried to hide the evidence.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
So 3 weeks later, neighbours complained about the smell coming from the shop and called the authorities.
Didn't think that through.
No.
That's what's going to happen with decomposing bodies.
Yes. The police arrived, found the corpse under the shop, and thought it was MacDonald, whose pseudonym was Brennan.
Yeah.
So I'm a little confused about what they actually thought it was, who he was identified as. And the corpse was buried at the hospital, and thus MacDonald was assumed to be dead.
Yeah. I would assume if he was operating out in the open with a business under the surname Brennan, that he would have been wrongly identified, the corpse wrongly identified as Brennan.
But
that's just my guess.
But an obituary was placed in the newspaper, and old workmates held a memorial for MacDonald, who was deceased.
Oh.
So, I don't know. This is where it gets a little bit confusing.
That is confusing.
Yeah. So, for the deceased, who at the moment was in Brisbane.
Yes.
And then
very, very much alive.
Very much alive. And then went to New Zealand.
Oh.
So
he's definitely making his way through the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, and it's the Commonwealth by this stage. It's not the Empire anymore. Yeah.
And yeah, because Queen Liz is on the throne and that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Still fairly early in her reign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I've watched The Crown. So MacDonald had the urge to kill again, but apparently he had to do it in Sydney. So he left New Zealand and came back to Sydney.
Interesting attachment to Sydney as the location of the crimes.
You know, a lot of people have their hunting ground.
True.
And where they're comfortable. So, shortly after his return, he bumped into an old work friend, John McCarthy.
Okay.
Who was, in shock, because apparently this dude's dead.
Okay.
And just like, hey, ghost!
Definitely a resurrection situation going on.
Yeah.
Zombie, I don't know, but you would be quite, perplexed is an understatement.
Yeah.
Severe understatement.
Well, MacDonald isn't aware that he's dead. I would think he'd take more advantage of it if he was aware of it, but he's not actually aware that he's dead.
Right, being up
because
north
he
and then
took off and then went to New Zealand.
And then Zid, yeah.
So they go for a drink, because that's apparently what you do in 1960s Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
And McCarthy explained the situation to MacDonald. There are so many mooks.
Yep.
And then asked MacDonald whose body was found under the shop. Like, that'd be the first question I'd asked, really.
Yeah.
Like, who's the dude that's dead?
Yes.
and now buried.
What's
in
the
hospital.
identity?
Yeah. So MacDonald became paranoid and left for Melbourne now.
Okay.
So he's done the whole East Coast basically.
Basically, yeah.
So McCarthy went to the cops who didn't believe him. They said he was drunk and to go home and to sleep it off, which is kind of understandable at their part.
Yeah.
Like, you're confronted with this guy who's been drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably smell the alcohol or whatever. Talking about this guy that's dead.
In the bag.
Like a walking corpse.
Mm.
Right? And I stole that from the article. But he then went back next day with the same story. So you'd think they'd be kind of thinking, oh, what's up here? Either this guy's insane or there's something to this. And they didn't believe him. They still didn't believe him.
They still didn't. Okay.
So he went to the Daily Mirror, which is a paper in Sydney,
Mm-hmm.
and they believed him. And they reported on the case of the walking corpse.
Well, yes. You would not be surprised by that, really, I should think, because, you know, it's got a sensationalistic angle to it. There's potential high circulation to be had.
Oh, yeah.
And
sensational covers, like, the rest of MacDonald's life. Until he gets sentenced.
Yeah.
So the article forced police to exhume the body.
Mm-hmm. Weight of public opinion.
What I think is so dumb, though. They identified the body correctly. From fingerprints. And then they find stab wounds and attempted mutilation of the penis and testicles. You would think that they would have noticed this the first time.
What happened the first time? Was it trying to rush through to get to the Roz's bar, to the cops drinking place or something?
I have no idea. Go and get
Burke
donuts.
Street?
They got to go get donuts from Krispy Kreme.
Or the Australian equivalent in the early 60s.
Yeah, whatever. They need food. But you've got an unidentified body. Sure, you have an idea of who that body is, where, like, given the place and all that, but identify it correctly.
It definitely sounds like a thorough job was not done the
No.
first time. This could have all been ended earlier, wrapped up earlier.
Yeah, so the cops finally got their shit together
Mm-hmm.
and found out who it was, identified the body correctly, and realised that they had the Sydney mutilator. Like, who it was. They knew who it was.
Dun, dun, dun.
They knew it was MacDonald. So they made an identikit picture of MacDonald, and I think this is the one. No, that's actually a picture of MacDonald. So that's a picture of MacDonald when he did the killings. So that's what it looks like. Okay, and so they circulated identikit picture of MacDonald all over Australia, right? Every newspaper in Australia got this picture to print. And
looking a bit like Rupert Brooke.
Who?
Rupert Brooke was a war poet, English war poet in World War One, who died at Gallipoli.
Cool. Thanks for letting me know.
That's all right. I had to show you a photograph sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit of a resemblance.
That'd be cool.
Cool.
Brooks' claim to fame, looking like a serial killer. So MacDonald's gotten a job at Melbourne Rail when he moved to Melbourne. After dyeing his hair and growing a moustache.
A moustache.
A moustache. Because that was just the disguise of the time, I'm gathering. But he was recognised by a workmate, and the police captured him when he was getting his paycheck, which is like sucky, like if you think about it. No, you don't even get to like spend your money.
No, that's going to sour you on getting money forevermore.
Yeah, use it for your defence, bitch.
I wonder if it went into the defence fund.
I don't know, maybe. So, MacDonald admitted to the killings, and readily admitted. He's just like, yep, me, I did it. Whoop.
Okay.
And spoke about the rape when he was in the army, and that he was inflicting his revenge upon randoms. So, back to your question about whether or not that came up again, yes it did. Came up in his defence.
And maybe internal rage against the whole
System.
Persecution. Yeah, system. The system against gay people at that time.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe that's putting too...
I could go into it a bit further. Like, there was an interview done with him and that, but I don't really want to get into the issues.
A police interview? Press interview?
No, I think it was a press interview.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on Murderpedia if you want to read it. Murderpedia is a great resource.
I am looking forward to checking that out. You mentioned it the other day, actually, darling.
What, Murderpedia?
Murderpedia.
I love Murderpedia because they give you the articles about each murderer and you can just, and let you know where they're from and stuff. So it's really great. It's a great resource.
Have been somebody else we know.
The girls from My Perfect Murder.
That's it.
They use this resource as well and
they
recommend it.
They also mention it, and I heard it not too long after we were talking about. Yeah,
Karen and Georgia at My Favorite Murder.
Yeah.
That's a really good podcast.
Great podcast. Very funny too.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. So spoke about the rapes and that he was inflicting his revenge on random. So his trial began in September of 1963, which isn't a bad turnaround considering his last victim was in June of 1962.
That's really not a bad turnaround.
So just over
at all
a year.
Considering, yeah.
And this was the most sensational story in the nation at the time. Like, first serial killer, and although they didn't coin those terms, but you know what I mean, like massive murderer, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Massively sensational story. And on the stand, MacDonald went into great detail of the murders.
Great detail?
Great detail. Where is it? I've got the Murderpedia article here. And, he said he went into... Just give me a second.
Of course. Take your time.
The public hung on to every word that came from MacDonald's mouth. During the trial, MacDonald spoke in great detail of the gruesome murders. He told the court of how blood had sprayed all over his raincoat as he castrated his victims, put their private parts in plastic bags and took them home. And as I said earlier, he even told the court what he did with the genitals once he got home.
Of which... There's no record on Murderpedia?
There's no record that I could find.
Okay.
Or I might have missed it. There's a lot on him.
Have to go back.
There's a lot of information on William MacDonald, actually. So,
just from what you've told me, I'm surprised. I don't even know whether they were still doing it as often now, but there used to be a procedure in the earlier decades of the 20th century, probably in the wider British legal system too, but definitely in Australia. I know of some specific cases where parts of the court. Some of the demographics, such as women and children, were cleared out for more salacious aspects in testimony, sexual or violent in nature. So kind of think of it as a skeleton crew, like all male, enough needed to have a quorum to hear the evidence, but you know the more impressionable in quotation, the weaker in quotation marks, sex ages. Were cleared out, not to offend public morals. Well, doesn't sound like this happened here.
No, because some jurors fainted and had to be removed from the courtroom. So I'm not entirely sure that was what was happening here. So he pled guilty due to insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the jury went, even though there was evidence of insanity, the juries went, no, not happening. You're guilty.
There's not a high enough degree. There's a large enough degree of sanity and rational cognizance of what's happened and culpability.
Well, he took the private parts away with him.
That definitely points
to
a mind that's not that greatly disturbed.
He obviously took weapons with him at times, so it was thought. Anywho, Justice McLennan. More mucks.
Thank you, British diaspora.
Yeah. Justice McLennan said that this was the most barbaric case of murder and total disregard for human life that come before him in his many years on the bench. MacDonald was sentenced to life in prison with a strong recommendation that he never be released. His papers were actually marked with likely to offend again. And he was held at the end of his life. Mm-hmm. He was held in Long Bay Correctional Centre. He was the oldest and longest-serving inmate in New South Wales prison system.
Ooh.
When he died on the 12th of May 2015 from a gastrointestinal blockage at age 90.
Wow.
So there's a There's a picture of William MacDonald when he was in prison.
I'm sorry. The reason that I am I'm taken aback a little bit, giggling, is not only is that obviously within our lifetimes, only
It was only
about
5 years ago.
It was about the time we got to get to Syl.
Yeah, it was. You can just shush. That's the story of William MacDonald.
Wow. So he survived for
a long time.
Well, you didn't say.
He was put in jail either the end of 1963 or the beginning of 1964.
I assume that.
But he was in jail before that.
Oh yeah.
When he got busted after the Hackett murder.
Yeah, he would have been in jail before.
He would have been
1964 was over.
He would have been in remand. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the moment he was captured.
So over 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see why I wonder if he's Australia's first serial killer, because he wasn't a citizen, but on the other hand, he did commit all the murders here, and he was incarcerated here for a good long period.
Indeed.
So that's where the doubt comes in. But I would classify him as Australia's first serial killer.
Well,
with that term,
I think you could definitely make a case.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly have high instances of serial killers, serial killing after the Second World War in the baby boomer generation. So,
well, this is at the start of 70s and 80s in the States seem to be where a lot of their serial killers came in. And this is like at the beginning of that. Like, this is like the 1960s, but you know what I mean? Like, it's coming into that serial killer peak, I suppose you would say. You had Bundy and all that in that peak, and it kind of petered down in the 90s. Like, you got Dahmer and that, but it kind of petered down towards the millennium. There's still serial killers in that, but like there was a lot of serial killers in the 70s and 80s.
Going into Generation X and the
because you got
era of the
all
yuppies and whatnot.
in the 70s in the States. You got Manson, you've got Bundy, you've got the Green River Killer, you've got the Highway Killers, which there are multiples of. You've got a lot of the Highway of Tears in Canada. You've got the Boston Strangler was in the 70s, I believe. One
60s? One of them was in the 60s.
There was two Boston Stranglers, so one of them was in the 60s.
And there was a Yorkshire Ripper in the 60s too, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
As I said, this is like kind of the build-up of serial killers, and then you hit the peak, and then... But
and you
also
kidnappings, disappearances, deaths in Australia during the 60s as well, which you may or may not decide to cover.
Yeah, but also where I have doubt with Australia's first serial killer, one, he was English, two, there were like the baby farmers and that, wouldn't they be classified as serial killers? There were other killers that had multiple victims with the cooling off period before him.
Well, this might be not stirring the pot, muddying the waters a bit, and also this would definitely be British persons literally transported to Australia,
Convicts.
Because would there not be instances in Australia's convict history
Probably.
of serial killing?
Well, you've got Alexander Pierce, the first Australian cannibal.
There was a cooling off period there.
There was more than two victims there, and there was a cooling off period. So, you could argue that he was a serial killer, and that was in the 1880s, wasn't it?
No, 1820s.
1820s. I knew it was in the 18-somethings.
No,
yeah,
you didn't
it
even
was
have...
way before that.
Oh, it had been abolished for about 20 years in WA by the 1880s.
Yeah,
the convict system. But anyway,
there are lots of people in Australian history and in history in general, but this is for Australian history, that have had more than two or three victims with a cooling off period, which do fit the definition of a serial killer.
Maybe it's because even though you do have instances of run-ins with the law amongst serial killers in all historical and national contexts, maybe the convict era in our history it's too tied up in the beginnings of white settlement in Australia and a form of incarceration social movement. Maybe there are historians and writers of the phenomenon of the serial killer that want to try and divorce the concept, bring it away more from that sort of system. That makes sense.
I really do want to do more research on this part of who is Australia's actual first serial killer, because I reckon Pierce would be up there as a possible, because he escaped from. I'll do an episode later. He escaped from prison in Tasmania and killed. I think his victim count was 3 or 4, and there were cooling off periods in between each of those, including 2 or 3 he did on one escape, and then the last one he did on another escape. So, there was a massive cooling off period there. But yeah, anyway, we're going to talk about MacDonald. Sorry.
Was MacDonald's sexual orientation and the milieus in which he moved, was that made a great deal of, I wonder, including in a moralistic, disapproving tone, in press coverage and in the trial proceedings?
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
I didn't see any articles per se.
Okay.
But as I said, there is a lot of information on this dude.
Yeah.
He had a lot of... There probably are articles, I just couldn't find them in the set amount of time that I had.
Yeah.
But knowing the time frame and the period of society, it would have been massive.
Homosexuality as a perversion, as a disease.
They would have used... Sorry, go.
As something that leads to, insanity and
murder.
And mass murder and, all sorts of immoral goings on.
He would have been used... I would say... I'm not going to say 100% because I wasn't there and, as I said, I couldn't find the research.
The poster boy.
I would say that he was used as an example of the deviancy of homosexuality, yes.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me either, but more research needs to be done.
Because even Dharma was. And that was in the 90s.
Yep.
So I'm gathering in the 60s, it would have been worse than what Dharma was.
Yeah. And Australia had to wait on a state-by-state first and in a national basis for discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community to be stopped at a legal level. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of prejudice in society, but it's a different situation than it was back in the 60s.
Yeah, very different.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the story of Australia's first serial killer.
William MacDonald and the fixation upon penises.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have that fixation.
Hopefully not after severing the members.
No. I wouldn't go that far, not even to my exes. Alright, guys.
Thank you for that, Syl.
That's alright.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching.
We'll see you next week. And remember, like I Heart Murder. Bye.
Bye.